Camp counselors, what is the weirdest thing you've seen happen at camp? Story 1. I worked at a camp for a bit where we had a bunch of buffer activities that we did when kids got dropped off, while we set up things and while we waited for the kids to get picked up. The most popular was the vast amount of Legos that we had, and the kids obviously tried to make cars, spaceships, planes, and the likes. There was a choice few pieces for the really cool stuff, and as such the kids eventually started fighting. No matter what punishments we tried, they would not stop fighting over the Legos, so I took drastic measures. The kids seemed to argue about who had the strongest looking Lego man. I then brought in a zombie Lego man who had a jetpack and a space helmet and all that. He became the invincible Lego space zombie. I told all the kids that he was the most powerful Lego man possible and they needed to listen to me and quiet down or the Lego zombie man would get them. As always, there is one kid who immediately does the exact opposite of whatever I said and started yelling and running around with his Lego plane. I told him the Lego zombie had come for him and taken his plane. Then I made the entire camp gather around in a circle as they got to watch as the Lego zombie showed them exactly what happened to their precious Legos if they misbehaved. I dropped the Legos from way up and let them smash on the floor. Then the kid who was misbehaving had to pick up his now shattered Lego creations as the pieces went all over the room. This fixed the problem until the kids started ratting each other out, and then eventually they would start demanding public Lego executions. It got to the point where they would start chanting Lego Zombie, Lego Zombie, Lego Zombie as I held the Lego creations up in the air before shattering it. Needless to say, we took the Legos away. Story 2. I was on night patrol at my camp. The counselors slept in different cabins and the kids slept alone, so I had one counselor patrolling the cabins. I was opening the doors to make sure that they had all gone to sleep, and in one cabin all the kids were sitting in a circle with a few completely naked. One of the kids was a bit more physically mature than the others. They were all 8 or 10 years old. The more mature kid had some kind of liquid in his hand. He was also one of the naked ones. Each kid seemed to be taking turns poking the liquid that was in his hand. A few even poked it and then licked their fingers. I can only assume what that liquid was. I just slowly left. Story 3. I used to work at a summer day camp run by our local zoo. It was kind of an educational arts and crafts meet the animal kind of thing. Anyway, during the 2-week block where I'm stationed, the 7 to 9-year-olds, they would rotate so you wouldn't get burned out by certain behaviors of certain age groups, and I got stuck with the child from hell. He was 8 and a holy terror. He bullied the other campers, talked back, taunted the animals during zoo tours, and hit and scratched and threw things at camp counselors. One day, my ward from hell goes missing during craft time. One of the other counselors tells me that he demanded to go to the restroom and she walked with him across to the toilet and he proceeded to lock himself in the stall and refused to come out. I've had just enough crap from this kid, so I stormed into the restroom and pounded on the door and yelled, "Hey Martin, you better come out of that stall right now or I'm calling your mother." The kid throws open the door, runs straight into me, bear hugs my waist, and starts sobbing hysterically, screaming, "Please don't call my mommy, please don't call my mommy." During his breakdown, I notice he's wet his pants, probably why he decided to stay put in the stall. I tell him to stay there and I'm gonna go get some wipes and some spare underoos/shorts that we kept on hands for accidents. The look on the kid's face was indescribable, like I just threatened to kill everyone he ever loved or something. He let out a sob and screeched, "Don't tell mommy, I pottied on my clothes. I want dinner, I'm hungry, I don't want the belt instead of dinner." Long story short, pretty sure this kid was receiving some kind of physical abuse at home and was acting out at camp because of it. I felt horrible about confronting him in the bathroom and handled him with kid gloves for the duration of camp. I also told the camp director my concerns about his home life and she said that she would look into it. Story 4. We had 2 changing cabins at my camp for kids to change into bathing suits and such before going swimming. The boys of the camp had a problem just going in and changing and instead liked to spend ample amounts of time running around naked and screaming. So we had to take shifts standing outside the cabin making sure everyone was changing correctly. One day I was sitting outside the cabin making sure they were changing with the girl that I had liked at the time when one of the kids came out of the cabin and told me that he needed to talk to me. But he didn't want the girl to hear, so he whispered into my ear, "Dylan is showing people his butthole." Now I have to get up and walk into the changing room where all the kids are standing naked in a semicircle around the kid who's bent over a chair spreading his ass cheeks and showing everyone his butthole. I didn't even know what to say, so I just left. Story 5. Innocently urinating in our bathroom during pool time, I keep getting a whiff of something most foul. It's probably 90 degrees Fahrenheit in the bathhouse, super humid, so the smell just keeps on pushing my nose. I finish up, do some sleuthing, and I come across a wadded up pair of swim shorts. The smell is definitely coming from this piece of clothing. I get a stick, of course, and haul the stinky shorts outside. They are kids XXL. We only have one such kid, we'll call him Dookie Brown. They are covered and crusted in dookie, so I go to the pool to get my supervisor. He comes back to the scene of the shorts and we poke at them with a stick and he gags and then says, "Oh my god, there's a similar smell in my cabin, near Dookie Brown's bunk." We go into my supervisor's cabin, no foul smell immediately, and then we get to looking around D. Brown's bunk. The sleeping bag definitely smells funky. So we pull out his suitcase, more gagging. We open the suitcase. Oh my god, we have to burn this. We have to burn it. D. Brown's luggage consisted of no more than a few pairs of white socks and shitty clothes. Like encrusted clothing. But the suitcase wasn't full, not even halfway. It turns out lots of things. One, his mother thought that we would provide him with all of his clothes, so she just sent him to camp with socks and underwear and a couple of shirts. Two, Dookie had been throwing away what little clothing he had whenever he got shit on it. Three, Dookie Brown had no sphincter. Or something like that. This information came to us indirectly from the admin office. And his mother didn't send him with his medicine that was supposed to make his bowel movements predictable. She just thought that he'd be fine for 2 weeks, no biggie. Dookie Brown was so embarrassed to shit himself all the time, understandable, that instead of telling us, he just thought that he could hide it for a couple of weeks. We washed his clothing, got him a new suitcase from Lost and Found, and tried, this was my responsibility for finding the shorts in the first place, to get him to wear a diaper until his medicine came. I did this for 4 summers. More stories, you say? Here's a quick one. With my Teen Adventures program, we had one kid, one of my favorites, who had a new waterproof boots and was super proud of them. He kept on going around, "Look at my boots, they're so awesome and waterproof." And then this girl, quiet, nice, and smart, takes her water bottle and pours it directly inside the boots at his ankle without saying a word. The dude wasn't even mad, we all just laughed. Story 6. Did a lot of camp counseling a while back. Often worked with special needs groups. They were really easy to work with, but stories were inevitable. There was one camper who tried to leave his room all night, and we all had to help keep the door shut from the outside so he wouldn't leave. Eventually, he gave up and went back to bed, or so we thought. Checking in later, we realized he had disappeared. You see, there was an emergency exit to the cabin, but it was old enough that none of the alarms went off when it was triggered. He had gone out that way. We found him across camp in the kitchen in his underwear. There was also the kid who was in line at lunch one day and yelled, "I Spider-Man!" and proceeded to jump out the second-story window. One of the other counselors caught him by the leg halfway out the window and dragged him back in. Hey guys, are you enjoying the video? If so, please like and subscribe as it really helps out the channel and helps support us. Anyway, back to the stories. Story 7. Summer camp director for 12 years here. I could write a novel on the weird kids do, but one particularly comes to mind. I had a little girl who basically grew up in the camp, sweet as ever and incredibly intelligent. Since we don't provide lunches for the kids since it was a day camp, we would encourage the parents to pack a snack for their kids so that they could eat something at the end of the day. This specific child used to bring bags of dry cat food as her snack. Good old crunchy Purina. She loved this shit and had absolutely no qualms with telling everyone how tasty it was, to the disapproving glares of the other campers. Obviously, this was a concern of mine, so I inquired with her mother about it and her kid's interesting habit. Her response was simple. Yes, she has loved eating it since she was really little. Absolutely no concerns whatsoever. You may be thinking, who the frick allows their kid to do that? Is there something else going on with the family? Perhaps? Nope, not one bit, and believe me, I looked into it. Story 8. I used to work at a Boy Scout camp. It was a fun and safe place for kids from 12 to 15 to earn their merit badges. Now, in order to give perspective, the camp has an east and a west side. These campers work together to win challenges against the opposing side. It's a healthy competition. The sides compete in 3 major challenges: an air band competition where you play songs without instruments and only use the hands to symbolize their instruments, an intense water polo match where the campers choose 14 of their biggest and baddest swimmers/throwers to play against each other, and a capture the flag game where 300 kids are running around trying to find the opposing flag. Let's just say that this can get very heated. The East Side has already won in the air band and the water polo challenges and is about to play the capture the flag game. The West Side is now ready to do anything that it takes to win. The game begins and it starts as any game would. 15 minutes into this 2-hour event and things already started getting edgy. At 30 minutes, we have a report that a kid has been stabbed. Most of the staff are already helping this kid because we have all been trained in first aid. This wound is bad. A 2-inch gash to the leg by a lacerated blade. Let's just say that we were all pissed to high heaven. After we cancel the game, we get into more reports of things happening. Strangling campers for information, waterboarding, homemade handcuffs. A total of 5 kids got kicked out of the camp forever, and East versus West games were never played again. Story 9. I worked at an ABC all-boys camp for 5 summers, every summer before college started back. My takeaways: girls in the group will dominate younger boys. I've seen several had to break that crap up. A kid wet his bed and hid his sheets. I got them taken care of pretty discreetly. Don't think any other kids found out. He never mentioned it to me. He was 7. His mom knew, and I was her favorite. Same kid as number 2, we had a night where we left the bunks to go camp out in tents at the far corner of the camp. It was fun, pizza and s'mores and lights out fairly early. Wake up at 2 to 3 a.m. and hear quiet sobbing and smell like hardcore nose hair curling, vomit-inducing I become lucid fairly quickly because of that. Realize who it is sobbing. I tell him to get up and let's go. He gets out of his sleeping bag and I take it and throw it over my shoulders and walk with the kid down to our empty bunk. Got his shower stuff and walk him to the shower. Got his clothes and his undies and told him to toss those. Run and start the poo bag and the poo clothes in the washer. I'll dry them in the morning. Come back and the kid is finished washing up and getting dressed. I tell him that it's all cool, no one will know. Walk back to another bunk where I know there's a free bed. Wake up the counselor and tell him that he'll be sleeping in that bunk because he had an accident. Walk back to the tent and fall asleep. I didn't wake up until like 9:30. My morning alarm is at 7:30. I think, what the f? Apparently, the director was told about what happened, and he went up and got the kid up quietly and told them to let me sleep in. Pretty nice of him. Heard he left a few years after I quit working there, though. Sucks. Some junior camp kid, aged 7 to 10, took a dump the size of a pool noodle in the middle of our rolling hockey rink. Never figured it out. We actually looked for anyone walking funny. Had a straight-up co-counselor before all the kids arrived one year. He was asked to leave after the authorities were informed. He was caught hanging around and doing sketchy, not criminal yet, things with one of the nurse's kids. See a bunch of kids all huddled around reading a drumming magazine. They keep talking about how they'd like to bang that drum or ring that gong or whatever. And I come over and ask to see the magazine and they all freak out. Some parents put a Playboy in a drumming magazine. 14-year-olds are not smart. Had a line of kids going into the bathroom in the bunk. Unusual, they'd usually just lay in bed and wait their turn. The entire bunk was in line and I noticed their pockets are all full. I get them to empty their pockets and get in the toilet. One of the kids had a bunch of fireworks. What the f? Where did he get these? They were trying to break the fireworks apart and empty them into a mortar. I guess they wanted to make a bomb. Threw that crap away. Silly kids. I've got so many more. I spent 15 to 16 months at this camp in total. I miss it still. There are several that started working the same year that I did that are still there. I think I would have enjoyed that. I have a big boy job now and a wife and kid. If I didn't, I would be back immediately. I miss that place. Maybe when the kid is older. Story 10. Camp counselor for 5 years here. Kids do all sorts of f***ed up shit. You'd be surprised by how many kids poop and pee their pants. They also seem fond of pooping or peeing on other campers' things. Here are 3 good examples of normal campers doing f***ed up shit. I had a group of boys, 4 or 5, who would play Mario Kart on their DS's, and we eventually found out that the group had a rule that whoever lost the game would have to stick a broom handle up their butt. Interesting phone call home. We had a camper once who refused to go to the bathroom for an entire week. Right before bedtime, he screamed, "My anus is on fire!" and everyone thought he was just trying to be funny. We found a huge bloody turd in his shower basket in the morning. He denied it being his turd, naturally. I had a camper who was obsessed with the question, "Does peanut butter float?" And he would ask everyone and demand to know the logic behind your answer of sink or float. The kicker was that she would do the experiment every single day at lunch and knew it sank. Story 11. An ex-girlfriend of mine worked at a camp for tween girls for 3 years when she was in college. So in addition to the usual weird mess of allergies, minor injuries, and illnesses, kids with utterly bizarre personality habits, particularly with regard to personal hygiene, freakouts and homesickness, and so on. You also had exploding hormones and the utterly cutthroat type of social drama that only kids of that age can muster. The staff would also place bets on whether or not and how soon they would get their first bedwetter. The first serious fight, one in which there was actually blood, even if just a little, the first period of a girl who was utterly unprepared for it and might even think that she was bleeding to death, and the first camp couple who tried to do a little experimentation out in the woods, and so on. The period thing was unpreventable because an angry parent had forced a change in the camp rules that the counselors can no longer give campers the talk at the beginning to the group, but only in response to individual requests, and even then it was considered wise to simply punt the question back to the parents unless it was a matter of actually having to show the girl how to put on a tampon. Yes, this was back before kids could go on the internet and just look this stuff up, but after the sex ed glory days of the 70s. So my ex-girlfriend is noticing that one of the girls is looking kind of tired and starts delicately inquiring about it. Nightmares, homesickness, on the rag, whatever, and it develops that, yeah, she's been having trouble sleeping because the girl on the bunk above her is shaking the bed at night and making weird noises when she does. My ex-G comes to the obvious conclusion and isn't sure how to talk to the other girl about it, so she checks in with her supervisor and finds out that there's a note in the girl's file about her occasionally having seizures. This sort of thing is a big deal for counselors for obvious reasons, and my ex-girlfriend wonders why she hasn't been notified about it already. It turns out that the seizure girl isn't on medication for it, doesn't have one of those bracelets that a lot of epileptics have, and only has them at night. Well, maybe she's having nightmares, but still, my ex-girlfriend is still a bit worried about this, and asks the first girl to come and get her if the seizure girl wakes up. That very night, the first girl comes up to my ex-girlfriend and tells her that it was happening. Ex-girlfriend sneaks into the bunk and, you guessed it, seizure girl is jilling off to the beat of the band. Ex-girlfriend knows what's happening because seizure girl is using the same technique that ex-girlfriend prefers, on her stomach pillow. The seizure girl climaxes and almost immediately falls asleep. The first girl doesn't want to go back to bed, but luckily there was an empty bunk, so to the later anger of a couple of girls who wanted their own bunk, she gets the spare bed. The next day, the seizure girl comes up to my ex-girlfriend and asks her why the other girl switched beds. She starts to tell her about how the first girl was being kept awake, and the seizure girl immediately turns beet red and looks like she's about to cry and starts stammering about her epilepsy. She reassures her that it's okay and she really can't talk to her directly about it. So she just says that she'll smooth things over with the other girls, which she does. Everything's cool until the parents come to pick up their girls. Seizure girl's mom wants to talk to my ex-girlfriend about her daughter, and even though she tells her that she would have found out if there was a problem, seizure girl's mom is insistent, asking about whether she'd participated in activities and been a discipline problem, etc. Finally, the seizure girl's mom mentions that her daughter told her that her former bunkmate switched beds and wants to know what's up with that. My ex tells her that the former bunkmate had problems at night with being disturbed, and her mom cuts in with, "Well, I did tell the camp about her seizures." My ex tries to be honest and started talking about how she didn't really think that it was epilepsy and that it was perfectly natural for a young girl of her age to, and seizure girl's mom leans in, gives her the stink eye, and says, "Seizures." So, of course, when I caught my ex hugging the pillow once after she'd finished, I came into the bedroom and she pretended that she had just woken up from a nap. What else could I do but lean over to her and say, "Seizures." Story 12. I teach sports at a day camp. One time a 3-year-old peed himself 4 times by 2 p.m. It was a new record. One of those times he peed himself right after walking out of the bathroom. The same kid was placed on a toilet once by one of my coworkers. He then got off the toilet, pooped on the floor, moved forward a couple of steps, pooped again, and then moved forward and pooped again. He then would not let my coworker into the stall, and it took him a while to convince him. I've seen a kid cry so hard that he vomited. One time, a girl peed herself right in front of me. We were outside doing water games, and she told me about 30 seconds before we went in that she had to go to the bathroom. I told her to wait. 30 seconds later, she peed herself. I just laughed it off and used the hose to wash her off. No big deal. One kid walked up to me with a half-colored picture of a keyboard. He said, "In this keyboard, there is a song, and in this song is a story, but the story has no words." We later made him tell us the story, and it was about pirates, storms, and evil Cheetos in a cave. The same kid once was playing floor hockey. All the other kids were in a pile next to one team's goal, trying to mash the ball in. They knocked it in. I look back to the other side and I see two kids, the goalie for the scored-on team and my storytelling friend, who was on the team that scored. He was spinning in a circle, looking at the ceiling. 5 minutes later, I look back and he had 3 more kids doing it with him. Strange kid, but incredibly funny and awesome.